how can I teach people if I retreat? How can I be an example of strength and perseverance and power if I give up and run away? And so it really is one of the reasons I came back. I worked really hard on myself after all this was happening because
Okay, this is the story that really made people stop and pay attention. Out of all the claims and behind-the-scenes stories that have surfaced over the years, this one stands out because of how serious it sounds. It is the kind of story that makes people read it twice just to make sure they understood what they heard. According to a former cameraman who spoke with the Daily Mail in 2025, a producer working on Ellen DeGeneres' show was allegedly asked to move their child's bone marrow transplant because the original date reportedly clashed with Ellen's holiday schedule. The cameraman claimed that the producer actually changed the medical appointment and came in for the taping instead. If true, that would be an astonishing decision, and one that immediately raises a lot of questions. Now, it is important to keep something very clear here. This story comes from an anonymous source, and it has not been independently confirmed. Because of that, it should be treated as an allegation rather than an established fact. That distinction matters. In situations like this, it's always important to separate reported claims from verified information. Still, the reason this story grabbed so much attention is not only because of the claim itself, it's also because someone was reportedly willing to share it years after the show had already ended. The timing is what caught many people off guard. For a lot of observers, it raises questions about why stories connected to the show's workplace culture continue to surface long after the cameras stopped rolling. That's where the conversation starts getting even more interesting. Some people see stories like this and wonder whether there are still former staff members carrying experiences they never fully talked about in public. Others argue that anonymous accounts should be viewed with caution until more evidence appears. Both reactions are understandable, and that's exactly why stories like this create so much discussion online. What really keeps this allegation alive is the idea that certain controversies do not always disappear completely. Sometimes they fade from the headlines, people move on, and everything seems quiet for a while. Then suddenly an old claim resurfaces, a former employee speaks out, or a new report brings attention back to events people thought were long forgotten. Whether this particular story is ever verified or not, one thing is clear: the conversation surrounding Ellen and the show's past workplace culture is still generating attention years later, and it doesn't look like that interest is fading anytime soon.
but it was horrible timing because it was me, then it was the show, and then it was like a thing that just felt like, why do I want to go back? You know, when someone clearly, it felt personal. It felt like somebody really did not want the show to come back.
Now, by this point, everyone knows Ellen DeGeneres' daytime show is over. Ellen has openly said she felt pushed out of the entertainment industry, and in her 2024 Netflix special, she admitted that she had been an immature boss at times. She even joked about behavior that included chasing employees and scaring them. Those were her own comments, and they sparked a fresh wave of discussion about what really went on behind the scenes. Then 2025 arrived, and new allegations started making headlines. A former cameraman claimed that Ellen's workplace environment was far more intense than many people realized. According to his account, the show reportedly went through 9 stage managers in a single season. In television, staff turnover is not unusual, but that number still caught a lot of attention and quickly got people talking. The same former employee also claimed that Ellen did not get along well with certain staff members, and that some crew workers were careful about who they interacted with backstage. These claims remain allegations, but they added to an ongoing conversation that had already been building for years. Another detail that stood out was something crew members allegedly referred to as the Ellen gaze. According to stories shared by former workers, it was a look that people supposedly learned to recognize right away. One person dramatically described it as a queen searching for her next execution. Whether exaggerated or not, the description spread quickly because it painted a picture of a workplace where people felt they had to stay alert. And when people started revisiting old clips, they found moments that suddenly looked very different in hindsight. Back in 2008, Mariah Carey appeared on the show for what seemed like a routine interview. During the segment, Ellen brought out sparkling juice and encouraged a toast, leading to speculation about whether Mariah was pregnant. At the time, the moment was played for laughs, but years later, Mariah told Vulture that the situation made her extremely uncomfortable. After later experiencing pregnancy loss, she said dealing with the aftermath of that public moment was difficult. Looking back, many viewers saw the interview in a much more serious light. A few years later, Taylor Swift appeared on the show and became part of a segment focused on her past relationships. During the exchange, Taylor appeared uncomfortable and repeatedly asked for the topic to move on. The clip remains widely discussed because viewers interpreted the interaction very differently over time. Then came November 2019, and a moment that went viral instantly. Dakota Johnson corrected Ellen on air after Ellen claimed she had not been invited to her birthday party. Dakota responded, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited." The studio laughed, social media exploded, and for a brief moment, viewers felt they were seeing something completely unexpected unfold right in front of them.
That made me think, I'm just like, someone's trying to really hurt me. And then right on the heels of that, I read in the press that there's a toxic work environment, which, I had no idea, never saw anything that would even point to that. There was an investigation and found out there were some things that happened that were not okay.
What made the conversation even more uncomfortable for many people was that the criticism was not limited to celebrity interviews. Over the years, viewers began revisiting moments involving everyday audience members, fans, and guests who appeared on the show. Looking back, some of those clips sparked debate about whether certain jokes crossed the line from playful entertainment into public embarrassment. One frequently discussed example involved a segment where hidden cameras were used to catch audience members taking extra merchandise. During the bit, one woman was shown taking an additional item that she reportedly intended to give to her sister. The footage was replayed for laughs, and she was placed in what Ellen jokingly called Ellen Jail. While some viewers saw it as harmless comedy, others felt the situation put unnecessary attention on someone who never expected to become the focus of the joke. Another moment involved a fan who created a painting of Ellen and Portia de Rossi. Instead of simply displaying it, Ellen joked about how it looked and compared it to other celebrities. For some viewers, it was a funny television moment. For others, it felt awkward because the fan had clearly invested time and effort into creating something supportive. Critics also pointed to interviews where guests were interrupted or conversations were cut short. On their own, these moments might not have attracted much attention, but as more examples were collected and shared online, some people began to see a larger pattern rather than isolated incidents. Then came April 2020, the moment that changed everything. Comedian Kevin Porter posted a tweet saying he would donate $2 to a food bank for every story people shared about Ellen allegedly being mean. What started as a social media challenge quickly exploded. Instead of a handful of responses, thousands of people replied with stories describing experiences they claimed to have had with her. Many of those accounts were impossible to independently verify, but the sheer volume of responses generated enormous attention. Suddenly, the topic had become impossible to ignore. Soon afterward, major media outlets began investigating workplace allegations connected to the show. BuzzFeed News spoke with current and former employees who described concerns about workplace culture, management practices, and how complaints were handled. Their reporting became a major turning point and pushed the controversy into mainstream headlines. What made the situation even more significant was that several public figures weighed in. Some celebrities, including Ashton Kutcher, Katy Perry, and Kevin Hart, defended Ellen, saying she'd always been kind to them. At the same time, other voices claimed negative stories about her had circulated within Hollywood for years. That contrast became one of the biggest questions surrounding the controversy. Why did some people describe positive experiences while others described something completely different? For many observers, the debate became less about one person and more about how power, status, and workplace dynamics can shape very different experiences for different people.
And so when I started hearing, reading ridiculous things, and then it just kept going and going and going and going. And then it was during the summer, so I didn't have any platform to respond to it. I just kept saying to Portia, I was like, if I was a fan of somebody, and even if I loved them, but I kept seeing something go on this long, I would think there must be.
As the controversy surrounding the Ellen DeGeneres show continued to grow, Warner Media eventually stepped in and launched an internal investigation. At that point, the conversation had moved far beyond social media posts and viral stories. Serious questions were being raised about workplace culture, and the company was under pressure to respond. In August 2020, 3 senior producers, Ed Glavin, Kevin Lemon, and Jonathan Norman, left the show following the investigation. That was a major development. Large media companies do not typically make leadership changes of that scale without believing action is necessary. The departures immediately fueled speculation about what investigators had uncovered behind the scenes. The following month, Ellen DeGeneres addressed the issue directly on air. During her season premiere, she apologized and acknowledged that problems had occurred within the workplace. She said, "I learned that things happened here that never should have happened." At the time, many viewers saw the statement as a significant moment and wondered whether it would mark a turning point in the story. However, the conversation took another turn when Ellen's 2024 Netflix special was released. Critics argued that the special presented the controversy from a different perspective, with Ellen discussing how the backlash affected her personally. Some former employees later told Rolling Stone that they felt the special minimized or dismissed their experiences. That reaction reopened debates that many people thought had already been settled. For some observers, the contrast between the 2020 apology and the later Netflix special became one of the most discussed parts of the entire controversy. Supporters viewed her comments as an attempt to explain her side of the story. Critics felt she had shifted focus away from the concerns raised by employees. The divide showed just how polarizing the situation remained years later. Then, in 2025, additional allegations surfaced from a former cameraman and other unnamed sources. Among the claims were stories suggesting that workplace expectations sometimes prioritized the show above personal concerns. Other allegations described difficult relationships between management and staff. These claims remain unverified allegations, but they echoed themes that had appeared in previous reports and employee accounts. Meanwhile, Ellen and Portia de Rosa reportedly settled into life in the Cotswolds region of the United Kingdom. Ellen publicly stated that political concerns influenced the decision to relocate. Even so, the move attracted attention because it happened while public discussion about her legacy was still ongoing. At the same time, Ellen continued facing public scrutiny on other fronts. In 2025, reports emerged about a lawsuit connected to a 2023 traffic accident, with allegations that a stop sign had been missed and injuries resulted. The legal matter is separate from the workplace controversy, but together, these developments have kept Ellen's name in the headlines. Years after her show ended, the debate surrounding her career, leadership style, and public image continues to generate discussion and strong opinions from all sides.
I really did think about not coming back because it did, it was devastating. Because it started with me. It started with attacks on me and attacking everything that I stand for and believe in and built my career around. I am a kind person. I am a person who likes to make people.
And that is exactly why this story continues to follow Ellen DeGeneres years after her daytime show ended. Despite the investigations, headlines, and public debates, many people feel there are still unanswered questions. No single event completely closed the chapter, and that has allowed the conversation to keep resurfacing whenever new claims or interviews appear. The thousands of responses that flooded social media during the controversy are still available for people to revisit. Former employees, audience members, and others who shared their experiences remain part of the public discussion. Because of that, many observers believe the story could continue evolving if additional sources decide to speak publicly in the future. The situation becomes even more complicated because opinions remain deeply divided. Some celebrities who worked with Ellen have defended her and described positive experiences. Others have pointed to reports from former staff members and argued that those accounts deserve serious attention. As long as those competing perspectives exist, the debate is unlikely to disappear completely. Another reason people continue talking about it is that Ellen herself has not completely stepped away from public life. In interviews, she has joked about being bored, and comments like that naturally spark speculation about whether she could eventually return to entertainment in some form. If that ever happens, many expect the same questions and controversies to immediately return to the spotlight. That brings us to For Your Approval, the Netflix special released in 2024. Many people expected the project to help Ellen tell her side of the story and perhaps bring some closure to the controversy. Instead, it created a whole new round of discussion. During the special, Ellen said she had been kicked out of show business twice, once for being different and once for being perceived as mean. She also described herself as an immature boss and joked about workplace behavior that had become part of the public conversation. The audience laughed, but not everyone watching interpreted the material the same way. One detail that drew significant attention was the reported value of the Netflix deal. Reports indicated Ellen received a substantial payday for the special, leading some critics to question whether someone receiving that level of support from a major streaming platform could truly be considered shut out of the entertainment industry. Several former employees later spoke to Rolling Stone, expressing frustration with how the controversy was addressed. Some felt the special focused heavily on Ellen's perspective, while giving less attention to the experiences former staff members had previously described. Because some sources chose to remain anonymous, they said they still worried about potential professional consequences for speaking publicly. That contrast remains one of the biggest reasons this story continues generating headlines. On one side is Ellen's argument that she became the target of overwhelming criticism. On the other side are former employees who believe their concerns have never been fully acknowledged. As long as those two narratives continue to collide, public interest in the story is unlikely to fade anytime soon.
Well, let's talk about what's happened. There is an elephant in the room, and there will be people who think, oh, Ellen's leaving now because of everything that went on last year. I don't have to remind you, there was an allegation of a toxic workplace. You had to get rid of 3 top managers here. People went after you.
Now, here is another part of the story that often gets overlooked. When people talk about the fallout from the controversy surrounding the Ellen DeGeneres show, the focus usually stays on Ellen herself. But according to some former employees, the impact did not stop with the host. It extended to people whose careers became connected to the show's reputation long after it ended. One example is Kaylin Allen, who became a familiar face through the show's digital content and YouTube channel. After the controversy gained national attention, Allen spoke openly about how difficult it became to move forward professionally. He described the situation as becoming a scarlet letter for all of us that worked at the show. He also said, "It took forever for people to even book me for stuff. I couldn't get a job." Those comments highlighted a side of the controversy that many people had not fully considered. According to Allen, the stigma attached to the show's reputation followed former staff members into new opportunities. He even recalled hearing that someone involved in hiring questioned whether he was just a little too close to Ellen. Whether fair or unfair, those perceptions reportedly created challenges for people who were trying to build careers beyond the show. For critics, that contrast became striking. While Ellen secured a major Netflix special and remained a well-known public figure, some former employees felt they were left dealing with consequences they had little control over. It raised difficult questions about who bears the long-term cost when a major workplace controversy erupts. Then there's Greg Fitzsimmons, a comedian and writer who worked on the show's first 2 seasons and won Emmy Awards during that time. During a podcast appearance in August 2025, Fitzsimmons shared his own perspective on the workplace environment. He described Ellen as difficult to work with and recalled stories that painted a tense atmosphere behind the scenes. One of the most talked about details involved his claim that some first-time writers were so overwhelmed by the pressure that they ended up crying in the hallways. He also described a taping where audience members started doing a wave during Ellen's monologue after a warm-up activity. According to Fitzsimmons, the reaction backstage was intense and suggested a strong desire to keep every detail under control. As more former employees and industry figures spoke publicly, another question began to emerge. How aware was Ellen of what people say was happening around her? Following comments from figures such as Adam Carolla and others, reports surfaced claiming that Ellen was surprised by many of the allegations and did not realize staff members felt that way. For some observers, that explanation raised even more questions. Critics argued that if so many people were describing similar experiences, it became difficult to understand how leadership could remain completely unaware. Supporters, meanwhile, suggested that large productions can sometimes create disconnects between management and staff. Either way, the debate continues because it cuts directly into the core issue that has followed Ellen's legacy for years.
Have you spoken to Anne Hesh at all since her accident?
If not,
Do you want to...
we're not in touch with each other, so I wouldn't know.
And this is where the discussion starts taking another interesting turn. Beyond the workplace controversy, Ellen DeGeneres has also faced attention over a separate legal matter involving a traffic accident. While the lawsuit itself is unrelated to the allegations surrounding her show, some observers believe it could still keep public scrutiny focused on her for quite some time. The case centers on a collision that reportedly took place in Santa Barbara County in October 2023. According to court filings, a driver has accused Ellen of negligence and claims that she failed to stop at a stop sign before the accident occurred. The lawsuit was filed in 2025 and remains an active legal matter. As with any ongoing case, the allegations have not fully been resolved in court. On the surface, a traffic lawsuit might seem completely separate from the workplace controversy that dominated headlines years earlier. However, legal proceedings often attract significant attention, especially when a high-profile public figure is involved. If the case progresses further, it could place Ellen back in the spotlight at a time when discussions about her public image are already continuing. At the same time, attention has also remained focused on the celebrities who publicly defended her when the workplace allegations first emerged. Figures such as Ashton Kutcher, Katy Perry, Kevin Hart, and Scooter Braun all spoke positively about their personal experiences with Ellen. Their comments reflected interactions they personally had, and many people believe they were speaking honestly about those experiences. Still, as additional allegations and employee accounts continued to surface over the years, some critics began questioning whether celebrity experiences provided a complete picture of what life was like behind the scenes. That became one of the central debates surrounding the controversy. Was the experience of a famous guest the same as the experience of a producer, writer, assistant, or crew member? Many former employees argued that those perspectives could be very different. Another topic that generated discussion involved Ellen's 2024 Netflix special and how she framed parts of her career journey. During the special, she reflected on moments when she felt excluded from the entertainment industry and compared different periods of public backlash she had faced. Some former employees and critics felt that comparison overlooked important distinctions between those situations. One former employee told Rolling Stone that criticism related to workplace behavior should not be viewed in the same way as criticism based on personal identity. That viewpoint quickly became part of a larger debate about accountability, public perception, and how public figures explain difficult chapters in their career. Ultimately, that disagreement remains at the heart of the ongoing conversation. Supporters believe Ellen has faced an extraordinary amount of criticism, while critics argue that many concerns raised by former employees still deserve attention. Years later, those competing narratives continue colliding, ensuring that the discussion surrounding Ellen's legacy remains far from settled.
My movie premiere, Volcano, I had told them that I was taking Ellen as my date, and I was told if I took Ellen, I would lose my Fox contract.
So where does the story stand today? That is the question a lot of people are still asking. Ellen DeGeneres is now living in the Cotswolds in the United Kingdom, and in recent interviews, she has spoken about feeling a little bored. That comment immediately caught attention because in entertainment, boredom often sparks new ideas, new projects, and sometimes even major comebacks. In an interview with the BBC, Ellen suggested she might be interested in doing a talk show in the UK someday. On the surface, that sounds like a simple possibility, but if she ever decided to return to television, it's hard to imagine the comeback happening without intense public discussion surrounding it. The moment any new project was announced, many of the old controversies would likely return to the headlines. Articles, interviews, social media threads, and past allegations would almost certainly be revisited. Former employees who have already spoken publicly could be asked for new comments, while others who have stayed quiet might decide to share their perspectives as well. That is simply the reality when a public figure attempts a return after a controversy of this scale. Several voices who have criticized Ellen over the years would also likely re-enter the conversation. Podcast hosts, former staff members, entertainment reporters, and industry insiders would all have fresh reasons to discuss the allegations and workplace stories that continue to surround her legacy. Instead of focusing entirely on a new show, the media attention could quickly shift back to old questions that never fully disappeared. Part of the challenge is that Ellen's explanations have not convinced everyone. In discussing criticism she has received, she has often described herself as direct, blunt, or immature. Supporters argue that those traits can sometimes be misunderstood. Critics, however, believe those descriptions do not fully address the concerns that former employees have raised over the years. That difference in perspective remains one of the biggest obstacles standing in the way of any potential comeback. On one side is Ellen's version of events. On the other side are accounts from former staff members who continue to describe very different experiences. The gap between those narratives has never completely closed. Adding to the uncertainty are the legal matters and public scrutiny that still surround her. As long as lawsuits, media investigations, and employee accounts remain part of the conversation, questions about her leadership style and workplace culture are unlikely to disappear. What makes the situation so fascinating is that nobody really knows what happens next. Will Ellen eventually launch a new television project and attempt to rebuild her public image? Or will additional former employees step forward with new stories that reignite the debate all over again? One thing is certain, years after the Ellen DeGeneres show ended, the conversation is still going strong, and public interest in what comes next remains incredibly high.